Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Ronna, and before we actually start talking with our guest, I just wanted to explain that we all know it's election season, and we are pre-taping this show. We're sitting here on Wednesday the 7th, but you'll be watching it on Tuesday the 13th. We're not able to do live shows for the next couple because the League of Women Voters is going to be sponsoring a couple of really important New London candidate forums on the next two Tuesdays. And they're going to be held at the Science and Technology Magnet High School. On the 13th, it will be a forum of city council candidates. And the following week on the 20th, it will be a forum of Board of Ed candidates. So if you can make it on purpose or in person, that's great, but we are going to have interviews at the same time on the 13th talking about Board of Ed issues and on the 20th talking about council issues. So with that in mind, welcome Jason Morris.
Thank you very much.
And Jason is running as a Green for the Board of Ed. And unfortunately, I'm sorry we won't be able to have call-ins, but I hope we can cover any questions that people who are viewing come up with. So welcome, Jason. And I guess I wanted to start out just asking you how you got involved with your interest with public education.
Well, I started getting interested in going out and making a difference in the world, you could say, around September of 2011. I was absorbing a lot of information. I was piqued interest by the Occupy movement. And in spring of 2012 is when I really kind of focused and said, I need to, instead of looking at all of these issues, I need to focus on a few and focus my energy towards making a difference in these areas. And so one of them was, or the most important, was education. And that's when I started going to board meetings. Ever since then, I've been to just about every meeting. And I got connected with a group called New London Parent Advocates, and I started working with them. We did some amazing work, like pushing for lower class sizes and more guidance counselors, more materials for classroom, lots of good stuff that the district needed, and really kind of started being a watchdog for the district.
So you've been going to board meetings now for close to 4 years, 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. So as kind of a semi-outsider, because you are a parent and a New London resident, so not a total outsider, but not being on the board, what kind of experience has it been to be observing the Board of Ed meetings?
Oh, it's been a wild ride, you could say.
Everything in New London is kind of wild.
It is.
It's high pitch.
I can't imagine the city council meetings because there's so many issues that they work on. But education is fairly focused, but it is very broad once you really dig into it. And I've been digging into every single policy that comes across the board, and I've been trying to give them feedback and working with them and working with outside groups to influence and such best as possible. And we've seen ups and downs. We've pushed, and they've either said, either the state's pushing against us, or we can't, or just ignoring. Or other times that's a good idea, let's do it. Or hey, come back to us with more information, a presentation, and that's what NLPA has done. We brought them a whole report about discipline in June of 2014.
Yeah.
And that really highlighted what's going on in our discipline system in our district, and that we need to make changes. And they said, okay, well, we need a more detailed plan. So we put together a community group, which is called the School Discipline Working Group. It had church leaders, college professors, college students, high school students from New London, parents, the teachers union president, tons of NLPA members. Put them all together, put our heads together, and 8 months later we came out with a presentation of all our research and a timeline plan for rolling out what's called restorative practices.
And the response has been pretty positive.
It was very positive. The superintendent, the entire board were ready to go, and they're like, let's do a pilot. And so they secured funding through a grant that they already had in place, that was sort of for the goals of restorative practices, and they took that money and they created a pilot, and now we're going to be seeing how it works out this year.
Now, while we're touching on restorative practices, maybe now would be a good time for you to explain what that is and how that would differ from what's going on in the schools right now.
Okay, right. Yeah, so right now we have a system where we're kind of doing the best we can, where we have an issue. Maybe a kid needs help with behavioral issues, and they have some services through guidance, through psychological, through social. But in the day-to-day, the classroom experiences, the issues you have between students, the issues you have between students and teachers, a lot of people feel frustrated with the amount of resources that are available to help them with the day-to-day issues with students, behavioral issues. And what we're proposing, or what they're doing, say kids get in a fight, they may sit down and talk about it real quick about what happened, but in the end there's a zero tolerance policy, and you're out of the school for 3 days, and you come back and the problem is still there. It's not actually resolved. And
one of the issues that schools have, and very often in city schools, even though this isn't a big city, it's got some things in common, is that students who are suspended are more likely to drop out.
Yeah, you're actually twice as likely to drop out of high school if you are suspended just once. So imagine how much that goes up with twice or 3 times. So really trying to prevent the use of exclusionary practices, of getting them out, taking them out of the school community, is what this is focusing on. It's trying to provide the service that brings the kids together, or brings the kid and teacher, brings the parents in when needed and such, and restores the relationship between the students or between the teacher. And there's multiple levels to it. There's the first level. It's probably one of the easiest and less time consuming, where just classrooms have circles, and the kids get to talk about what's going on in their lives, or personal things that, over the weekend I had what was your favorite thing that happened over the weekend? And so each kid talks about it, and they really kind of develop that connection, and you get the school community feel. And when you have that feeling and that connection with your other classmates, you feel less inclined to maybe harm them in some way and hurt them. You don't want to cause them harm. And so that's the first layer, and then the second one, it gets to more intensive, where you are sitting down with both of them one-on-one to restore the relationship they had together.
And I'm thinking about this from a teacher point of view. The class sizes in New London, we know, are kind of high.
Oh, yes.
And teachers, I'm sure that if you have 1 or 2 disruptive students in a class, it's really rough on teachers. I'm wondering, what has been have you gotten any teacher response on this restorative practice policy?
We haven't, from the teachers union president, his quote is that, it looks very promising, and he's
good.
Very excited about the pilot and such, and we're very excited about it. We have multiple teachers who have actually been selected or going to be selected, who are interested and ready to go. We want to do this in our classroom, and that's really where you need to start. You need to start with the people that are excited to do it, really interested, on board. And then when they use it in their class and they show their other teachers, the teachers that are like, I'm okay how I am, or the ones that are like, no thank you, I'm very much against, they get to see how it works, and that it is very positive, that it works great for them, that the more class time, because you have less issues in the classroom. And that brings on board the people who are more hesitant.
Yeah, and I imagine that some of the fear of some teachers is, okay, you can't suspend a child or get them out of your class if they're a problem, but we need to have tools to deal with it. Don't just leave us in the lurch. And this policy doesn't do that. Right.
This is not saying that if there's a kid who's causing a major disturbance, you can't take them out of the classroom. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that we're never going to suspend a kid ever again.
No, although hopefully we'll reduce that.
That's the point, is the reducing, yeah, very much. And it's just, there's tiered structures. They have huge districts that have successfully implemented this, large, significant benefits that they've seen, in research and studies that have been done. And there's a tiered disciplinary matrix where it's like, depending on the severity of the violation, can determine, what services are given.
And this was passed recently, so I'm guessing that some implementation of the pilot should go into effect pretty soon.
Yeah, so they're actually piloting it in middle school. They've drafted the program, they put together the package, and they're doing training real soon, and then they'll have it started in the classrooms probably next month.
Wow, that's actually pretty exciting.
It is. So.
And I guess one thing that is kind of exciting to me about it is the Board of Ed, the function of it is to set policies. And yet, those policies can really affect what the student and teacher experiences are, even if you're not, dictating to teachers how to do things. The policies can provide an environment that can be supportive or not so supportive, depending on how you write them.
And I think it's very important for every board member to do their research on every policy they're working on. I wish I saw more of that over my 3.5 years, but that's one of the reasons why I'm running, because I put all my effort, all my energy into looking into every policy, and I'm looking at more than what's just on the plate. I'm always taking in more information and trying to expand my horizons, you could say.
And are there any other policies that you see that maybe could use tweaking?
Well, we did just pass I think the second reading will be coming soon of the physical activity policy, which is it's to be in compliance with state law, which was passed in like 2013 or so. Where when we pass this, we're going to be needing to update our uniform policy, because right now it's finally, as you know, in the it's uniform policy, on your third strike as an elementary student, you can have your recess taken away from you for a uniform violation, and it's like, how is that under your control at a 6-year-old, 7-year-old?
Yeah, and as you know, that policy was adopted in 2010, and I was on the board, and it was a huge bone of contention with me, and I have to say it was very depressing to me that I lost that vote by a 5-2 vote. Only one other board member, Barbara Major, saw that there was a huge problem with having kindergartners or first graders missing recess because of a uniform violation. For one thing, it seemed like it was inequitable with what was happening in surrounding districts where kids might have dress codes but not uniforms. And it was also, unfair because very young kids don't have control over their clothes. They don't purchase them, they don't launder them. So if there's a problem, it's a problem with the parents, not with the kids.
Yeah, it shouldn't be disciplining like that. So this physical activity policy as well, I've also proposed some edits to it, because it includes a piece, or a line where it's talking about where if you are in school suspended, you lose all physical activity for the day. And I'm not sure, I actually don't agree with that. With all the research I've done, all the information I've taken in, that I just don't agree that if you are suspending a student for behavioral or for whatever reason, and you're expecting them to just sit in the classroom and do schoolwork all day, not with their other peers, and just kind of almost in seclusion with maybe a few other kids that are in trouble, how do you expect them to really absorb information when physical activity is so important for the brain to rest and to get away from what they're working on?
And of course, sometimes the ones who are getting in trouble are the ones who have inadequate physical activity to start with.
Exactly. So even gym, like maybe not recess, maybe not free open play for them if that's what you're trying to. Well,
Right.
they're in trouble. Well, okay, then at least gym. You know, a class. They're doing physical activity. Um, it's not free and open for them to choose, but they need that. They need that to learn.
And I imagine that to really be in compliance with state law, which I believe says that physical activity can't be used as a reward or punishment, that in-school suspension would still qualify under, that
Well,
if you use it as a punishment,
well, that was actually
it's still not in compliance.
well, that was actually my first interpretation of the law. But after further review, it was that if they're going to take it away, it needs to be specifically noted.
Oh, so there's a loophole in the law.
Yeah, but it basically forces districts to talk about it. Forces them to talk about when are we going to be taking away physical activity from children and put it into policy rather than different schools doing what they want to do.
Well, and this is something that I can't help but think is a real problem with kids who live in cities. It's more than kids who live in more rural areas or in suburban areas. Many of our New London students live in places where nature and open space are not easily accessible. Their backyards are concrete. They might not be safe for the child to be unsupervised. The nearest park might be too long a walk or bike ride. So in their time out of school, a lot of them are getting deprived of nature.
Yeah.
So to further deprive them of nature when they're in school really seems counterproductive. That's really actually how I got into the Riverside Park issue. I mean, I like parks and open space, but what really drew me in was the need for the Winthrop School students to have that access to the park.
It's very important, and there's just so many levels to it. It's just like, it's common sense. We need to keep that in mind when we're making policy. That what is this really doing to, every piece of what's important for a child to learn.
And what the goal is. And on the subject of the physical activity too, now it's harder to figure out what these things mean because of the magnet school district. But up to 2009, when we still had neighborhood schools, I looked at a lot of the school profiles that the state accumulates. And people were getting really upset that New London elementary school students, only 30 or 35% of them were at the competency rate in reading. And it's like, this is really not good. And I looked at the physical fitness levels, and at Winthrop School, only 2.9% of the fourth graders passed the physical education test, as opposed to about 35% statewide and about, 7 or 8% in the rest of the district. So we even saw then 5-6 years ago, that students who live in those neighborhoods in North New London, I know New London has fantastic sports teams, but it also has a problem with a lot of children not being physically fit.
Right, and that's actually a good comparison. I have those profiles too, and I hadn't, for the many times I look in them, I hadn't connected, to look at each of those for that. But that's a good thing to look at. I would want to look at Nathan Hales, because they've always been touted as great because they have the higher test scores in our district.
Yeah.
For elementary
They
school.
had I think at the time in 2009, they also had the highest
physical activity,
fitness score, but it was still pretty low statewide. I think theirs was about 10 or 11%. But statewide, it was something like 34%. So you just think, if you're trying to, target what developmental deficits our students might have from the lack of some kinds of opportunities, physical activity might be something that should be high on the list.
I very much agree. It's one of the many policies that we're bringing. Like, thankfully, Hearing Youth Voices did a 2-year campaign. Speaking of policies, speaking of positive things and positive policy changes, Hearing the Voices did a 2-year campaign talking about the differences in attendance policy, where their neighboring districts had things that notify them when they're going to be losing credit, when they're possibly too many high unexcused attendances, where they can do a appeal for their credit loss and such. Those things were not available in New London's policy, but they were elsewhere. And the board took to it nicely, thankfully. That's great. And recently it was passed, and it was a great achievement for them. It was interesting to see that every time Hearing with Voices pushing out this kind of issue, and they had events when the day was reporting on it. The comments on the day are just you can't even go into the comments. You shouldn't go to the comments.
I don't go to comments anymore.
It was hard to understand, and so I just kind of try to help them. Like, look, these are our neighboring places, and the people who are commenting against it, you're from the neighboring place who has these policies in place. So I'm sure your children are very much thankful for those sort of policies, and now we get to enjoy them too. Thanks for the example.
Yeah, and that's sometimes we do have to try to get parity with what's happening around us, because I'm not sure why, but in city school districts, there is more of a trend towards regimenting kids. And I think from there, I want to talk a little bit about how children do learn, because I think it is important when we look at our policies not to organize our schools at odds with how children learn. It makes our job so much harder. So what do we know about child development that we are making use of, but that we could make better use of in our schools?
Well, we know that teachers are very important. You can't sit them down in front of a computer and give them a piece of software and they're all set. And that's kind of a trend that we're seeing all across the nation, but especially in urban districts. And so things that we can do in New London are to look at what policies we have in place, including extended learning time, and not to say that there's enrichment activities that are wonderful. They're very nice, and they're a broad range of great things that the students get to do. But for our remedial time that they have in that extended learning time plan, it's a computer. It's a piece of software that they sit down with, and they have facilitators. They don't get the one-on-one teacher time that you would expect that they need. You really need. What we're getting away from as a large trend, especially with technology these days, is just getting away from the human interaction. I mean, they're at school, computer time, or remediation, more computer time. Taking tests, computer time. If you're at home, you have an iPhone, you have an iPad, you have some technology that gets you away from human interaction, and that's really what kids need. They need human interaction to learn, and they need to see the expression on your face when you're talking about something that's passionate, and it's important and interesting, and you need to have that reaction between the two. I think that's something that we need to focus on as a district.
Now, one of the jobs of Board of Ed, which is really important, is budgeting and figuring out. Our city has a limited tax base, but in terms of with the funds we have, how would you prioritize Board of Ed spending in ways that it's done now, and also in ways that you think could be done better?
Well, things that I see that we're really kind of losing sight of are very good comparisons that we can make between, say, middle schools, where our middle school had one guidance counselor for many years before just this last one. That one guidance counselor was responsible for almost 600 students.
That's a huge caseload.
You can't do that. You cannot serve every single student. You know what I mean? Like, it's just,
the social worker is perhaps working 1,800 hours a year. So and things have to be documented. So
it is, and I think that's unacceptable. And I know the NLPA felt that it was unacceptable. That's why we pushed for it a few years back. Only this past year did we use a grant that we got in order to get a guidance counselor in the middle of the year, and now we have them for this year as well. But the national average is 210 to 1 for the whole country.
And we're still not there. We're more like 300 something per.
Right, we're not there. But when it comes to Isaac, or you go to these other districts, Waterford or Stonington or Ledyard, they have much more than they need. And that's wonderful for their students, and I'm happy they have it. I just think we need to have at least the same. Why do, we have so many, we're given so many things that say in middle school is where they really drop off. Oh, the test scores, watch out for the test scores when they go to middle school. Or they start losing interest in middle school. And that's true because there's a lot going on. You got puberty, you have social stuff where kids are interacting.
Middle school
together,
is really a rough time.
It is.
In fact, I hated middle school.
I didn't have too much drama. It was high school that was probably most drama. But my daughter told me about a group in Isaac where they have an after-school group where they just talk about frustrations they have with academics, like in school. And it's like, that would be a wonderful resource for any student in every middle school, just having that available. And I imagine, I don't know if it's available in ours or not because I haven't reached out, but having the staff there to provide those sort of services is needed. And that's one of the priorities that I will make in the next budget on the board. I will say that we need to have at least 3 guidance counselors in our middle school, and they need to be funded, or at least plan to be funded by us, that year or the next year, within the next few years, that we are funding it, not a grant, because it needs to be sustainable. We can't rely on grants to supplant everything.
Right, and very often the grants do work that way. They'll fund something for a pilot for a year or two, and then the district has the option of committing to it, or it gets dropped.
Yeah, and it's completely possible. We can do it. Once the middle school becomes a magnet school, which it's actually already started this year. Next year it'll continue on, and now we will have the funds for this. Like it was, what was it, Nathan Hale calculated of what was the amount that they were going to get for a grant for being a magnet school from the state. It was over $1 million. I think we can afford a couple guidance counselors. That's for that amount of students. That was like 500-ish students. So we can't afford it. We just have to actually prioritize it and outwardly say it. We can't just let the administration give us their proposal and we just say, okay, it's great. We have to have actual goals and we have to actually push for them. If we don't, then we're getting what we asked for.
And when you're talking about things that directly affect the students, what about class sizes?
The class sizes is a big, muddy problem that we've been working on, say over the last couple of years. We're trying to find the space, and it's very important for our district, for the future of our district. When we started this magnet transition, I projected that we were going to get about 4,300 students in the end of our whole changeover total, starting from around 31. And guess what? A month ago at a meeting, they're like, okay, we're projecting about 4,400 in 8 years.
Well, I mean, the good news is that, the magnets were supposed to be bringing in 25% of our students from out of district. And I do think a positive of the magnets is it's a good thing for suburban kids and city kids to be sitting in classrooms together and meeting each other, because if you look at the demographic maps of Connecticut, it's a pretty segregated state, and it's nice for kids to start out getting together. But yet, I don't think it was really considered from the beginning, that means our school population will be 25% above what we've been currently experiencing. And I think that, there have been young families with kids moving into New London over the last 5 years because they feel hopeful about the schools in part. And so we actually might have more of our own kids coming.
Right. We're going to have kids that are currently living here right now, but going to other districts. We're going to be bringing them back in. We're already seeing them come back in, about 100 or 200 that came back in this year.
I have a neighbor with a young child who wants the child to go to Nathan Hale and is moving to Groton because the kid will be able to get into Nathan Hale more easily living in Groton than living in New London. So there are some kinks to be worked out of the system.
Yeah, so that goes with, something I was interested in was getting some provisions entered into our school operations plan for each of these magnet schools to have a provision for proximity, where if you live within a proximity of the school, that you on the New London list of who wants to get into the school have a higher priority. And I think that just makes sense. I mean, it really it will meld the idea of traditional schools and magnet schools a little bit better, bring a lot more people into agreeing with them. But as far as class sizes, there's a lot of pieces to it, and one of it is getting the space. And right now they're looking at a $31 million project to renovate Harbor School. And that would take out the newer building that really doesn't go with
where there was just the gym and the cafeteria.
Right, where we vote now. Yeah. There's some classes there, but they're going to get rid of that. That'll be kind of a bus, possibly area, entrance and parking. The reason getting rid of it is just it's in the newer part of the building, but it just doesn't go with anything. It doesn't look like it belongs there.
No, and actually the construction in the 20s and 30s when the original harbor was built was a lot better quality than the construction of the 70s.
Oh yeah. Well, the original building will stand, and then they're going to expand it out the back, and there'll be a nice open window atrium for the center connecting areas. We're going to install an elevator, of course, and to make it compliant.
Yes.
And we'll get more space that way. We may need more. I'm not sure because they haven't really talked about it, but that's the space part of it. The other piece that's important right now that parents, that community members, that teachers really should be pushing for are things like, are the thing of the contract negotiations for the teachers union right now. They're in negotiations, and the board needs to hear your feelings on whether we need smaller class sizes or not. Because our teacher contract says that if you have that the max class size is 24, and then after that up to 28, you need to aid. Right. You can't have more than 28 ever. We need to bring those down. They've previously proposed about 20 in the high school as the typical class size. So whatever we can get to, but we need to bring that class size in the teacher's contract down. And that will start the ball rolling, because if we can get that agreed to by the district and by the teachers union, get that approved by, I believe June is when, at the end of the year is when it's done, then the state can, that's what the state uses when they're building buildings. They have to have that contract.
So they figure out their space requirements.
Right. They won't build smaller rooms if that contract says larger. So that's very important. We need to get that happen, this year.
And it seems to me there's more of an urgency attached to it because we are a magnet school district. And so far, I think we haven't really had much of a problem attracting out-of-district students. But more and more, I think, for one thing, your kids are going to have a longer bus ride if they are coming from East Lyme or Montville or Groton to New London. But if your home district has classes of 22 kids and even the beautiful new school with art and music programs and great teachers and other staff, but if your child will be in a class with 26 other students, you might think twice about whether that's the right place.
Yeah, very much. I mean, we have Stonington elementary classes that are in the low teens. Whoa, that's possible today? Well, yeah, it's possible in Stonington, right? But in New London, we have double that, and that's a huge competitive issue. Like if we're talking, like you were just saying,
Yeah.
how can we say that, hey, come to our district when we have large class sizes? We're not going to talk about that in the tour, of course,
Right.
but we can bring those down. We can do. We have Harbor School. We're working on figuring that out. We have to bring down our sizes in order to be competitive.
Now, was Harbor School anticipated to remain for the lower grades?
Yes, it would be elementary.
So how far up is it? Are they thinking of?
They're going to just
Like,
renovate the entire building, and they're going to make more in the back.
Now, is it
fit.
going to be just its own elementary school, or will
Correct,
it,
yeah.
because now it's like pre-K and kindergarten,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And they're only using the first.
They might
floor.
have first grade. I'm not sure, but I think it's
Yeah.
real low grades right there. The project, as you know, for the middle school is moving forward, and it's going to be
Right.
a phased-in project where they're going to expand out to the left or to the west, and then they're actually going to take out the kind of cafeteria and
Okay,
connection there.
Yeah, the part that you get to from Lincoln.
Right, and then they'll redo everything else, and actually the whole Board of Ed building is going to be redone as well, and we're going to have to shift people around during it, but they have the plan for the students. It's going to be great and easy on them.
Now, since we're talking about school renovation, what are the plans for the high school?
The high school, there's a large just grass field right behind the high school, and they're just going to build it all right there, really, most of it.
And they're hoping to not displace the students
Right.
during the construction.
Yeah, they're hoping to just build it right there and then knock down the old one, kind of like how Waterford
Yeah, it's
did
what
it,
Waterford did. I assume the Science and Technology Magnet Building will remain unchanged.
Right, that's going to be connected through. It's going to be like kind of like an L shape connected to the Science and Tech. The old building will come down. They're going to put up a little small Board of Ed building where the lot is now, on the far
yeah.
against not Jefferson, but the street over there. I forgot.
Chester.
Against Chester. That's where the building would be, and then you'll have a nice kind of entry, almost like so you can come in and drop off buses and such.
And I know they've just been in the process of choosing the architect, and really that's moving forward. I'm not sure
Yep.
what the timeline is, but it definitely seems like it's moving forward on kind of a fast track.
Yeah, they're working on it, working hard on it.
Now, I guess we've talked about a lot of things very out of order to what I anticipated, but I guess a general question I have is, what do you see as the future of public education? It's it's under some threats, and what do you see as the future being, and how do we make the best future?
Well, if the grassroots and the college professors and the researchers and all the best, pediatrics and all the best knowledge. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The smartest people on education in the world, put it all together, it would get to somewhere very different than where we are now. But I think in the near future, 5 to 10 years, we really need to get towards teaching to the child, teaching them where they are. So like the Renzulli model, where you have classes that are not necessarily what grade you're in. Say you're in 4th grade, well maybe you're 3rd grade math level, maybe you're 6th grade English, and you're doing those things with kids that are in similar levels, rather than you're in 5th grade, you need to be learning this right now, or maybe you're way behind, and now I
Right.
have to teach a huge different varying levels of students in my classroom. You are where just about everyone is, and so we're all coming together because kids learn at different paces. It's okay.
And they don't learn the same subjects at the same paces.
Exactly. So they've had Khan Academy has been doing some work with their math in classrooms. They've been doing some pilots, and kids will do math on there, and they may be having a real hard time for a long time, but once something clicks, boom, they shoot up, and now they're right up with everyone else or above. And so like you said, they learn different subjects different times. They learn at different paces. Every kid is different, and that's what we have to that's what we need to focus on, rather than cookie cutter curriculum, cookie cutter standards, testing. We're going to get away from testing. We have hundreds of thousands of kids that opted out of the standardized tests last year. And it's going to be a whole lot more this year. We're going to get away from evaluating our teachers based on those tests. We're going to get away from evaluating our kids based on those tests, our districts, our states. There are much better ways of measuring performance.
And that was going to be my next question. What would good assessment look like?
It would look like there's standards for a state. The teachers in the district, they build a curriculum that works with the standards for their district, that's based on the culture of those people, of the people and the students that they have. And then the learning plans the teachers come up with themselves to work with the curriculum, and they build out the materials that they're going to be using, rather than, I'm going to purchase a curriculum from Pearson and all the materials from Pearson, and this is cookie cutter across the entire country, and every test I give to the students, every little work progress test is just copied out of the book. Teachers need to be given the autonomy that they went through college for 6 years or 6 years for this. That they know what they're doing, and they can create lesson plans. They can create progress assessments, authentic progress assessments that are tailored to the lesson that they give.
Well, I'm going to share for a second just a shocking moment I had. In the late 80s, I was going to a lot of these teacher education classes, and I went to a class for methods for learning how to read, and it was a fantastic class. But one thing we did was we examined textbooks, which we were not encouraged to use at all. And what absolutely shocked me was you looked at the tests, the chapter tests in this textbook, English textbook, and there was another book for teachers that was an answer key. And this was a textbook for like second graders. And I thought, all of us in this class are like graduate students, and why? Well, we weren't all graduates, we were some undergrads, but why do we need an answer key to be able to say which word in the series starts with a different initial letter? Mm-hmm. And it just seemed, I don't know, like the expectations of teachers were so low. I didn't anticipate at the time that the professionalism of teachers was really going to be under assault. That's what they're doing. It might have started that way.
It's really getting pushed away from the thought that a teacher is a professional, that they are trained, that they are certified, that they have experience behind them, that they know what they're doing. They're getting away from it so much that now curriculums are cookie cutter, where the lesson plan is made for you and it's scripted. So the teacher says this, student will say this, teacher says this in response. And it's like, our kids are not robots.
And our teachers aren't either.
Our teachers aren't either, And it's not that not just anybody can be a teacher as well. They're taking away, like, say, where was it, Kansas or Oklahoma, where they're having a teacher shortage. So they're like, okay, we'll reduce the qualifications for these certain districts. Basically, some people use the term scabs. But you bring people in who are not qualified, under-experienced, and taking positions.
And who are desperate for a job.
Yeah. And is that really the best that we can provide for our kids?
Now, we only have maybe 5 minutes left. And so on the subject of teachers, how does a district like New London, which is never going to be one of the best funded districts in the area, how do we attract and retain the best teachers? Can you think of anything on a policy level that can be done?
Sure. Yeah. Curious about the budget and about teacher salaries and such. They did finally get their increases to get much closer to outside districts recently. I think a year or two ago. But what's important is making sure that they get their steps, that that we're not like saying, okay, this year you're not going to get your steps. You get your steps. You know, this is a teacher's contract. We signed the contract. This is our promise. If you come into our district, this is where you'll be in 5 years from now. That's what you should be able to expect. And so just keeping what we have going as expected, and lowering our class sizes because teachers love to make a difference. But we give them 28 kids and a teacher's aide who's actually focused on the kid that has an IEP rather than helping you throughout the class. You have 27 kids basically,
right,
all to yourself.
And there probably is more than one child with an IEP in a class of 28.
Right, and especially in our district. Focusing on bringing in restorative practices and putting that out throughout the district gives them more classroom time because they're having less behavioral issues to worry about, and that makes them feel better and more safe in their classroom. Which is another great point about restorative practices. It lowers the amount of violent interactions that teachers have with students. So that's reduces our risk and insurance issues and law problems and money for that. Makes teachers feel safer to work in our schools. And parents talk about worrying about safety sending their kids to our schools. There's very little very little actual warrant for that. But that can possibly be the same for teachers as well. And so showing them how we have safer classrooms. Restorative practice is doing great things, So that going forward is something we can do as well.
Well, in the last minute or two, how about you tell people how they can find out more about your campaign or be supportive?
Sure. So on Facebook, I have Jason Morris for New London. I'm also, or we also have a page for me on the nlgreens.org website. My information is on there. You can check out my cell phone numbers there, or my email address. I use Facebook as an information tool, you could say. It brings information to me, and I can share it out with other people, and I use it for communication. And so you can find me on there, and I'm always interested in talking to anybody who wants to.
And if people want to stop into our office at 225 State Street, there's usually someone there.
Right, yeah. 225 State Street is our headquarters for Green Party this year.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank
Good
you
luck.
very much.
And to all, we'll be back next week, again, not live, but with Tim Hanser, and we'll be talking about council issues. So we'll see you then, and we hope we see you at the forums, too.
Trouble, one brother family around me. It's now a blighted neighborhood, over the river to the sea. Soon all that'll be left of it will be nothing but them good old memories. That parking lots. And decent Christmas. Saturday at your house, not mine. And decent Christmas. Where I be come Christmas time. Coming round to London this Christmas time. You know, it smells so good down by that sewer plant. Santa comes to town. They'll all build themselves a hotel, but you think they'll spread that wealth around? Better think again. Jody Rell can't even stop them when they come to tear my poor house down. Oh, here comes a wrecking ball. Having an old decent Christmas. Celebrate at your house, not mine. Having an old decent Christmas. Where I become Christmas time. I smell an imminent eviction coming down to London this Christmas time. Oh, Lord have mercy. Oh, no, it's starting to snow. Tell me where did I gotta go? Here comes the Scrooge, the one to blame. Well, if it wasn't Mr. M and Nick man, he said, what's the matter with you? Didn't I offer you for market value? Oh dear, Christmas is near. I thought I saw Santa down on the pier.